Santos Bonacci. It's 7 p.m. Sunday, and it's quite a sunny day down here in Melbourne. Very warm, but clouds overhead, and it has been like that for weeks. We've had rain on and off, and very unusual summer. Very unusual Aquarius summer in the Southern Hemisphere for us Aussies at the moment. Hope everyone's well. Thank you for joining me. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours. And this evening's show, this evening for me that is, will be dedicated to the memory of Giordano Bruno. Giordano Bruno, 17th of February. Just yesterday, for folks in Northern America there, 17th of February, 1600. And Giordano Bruno died for teaching true Hermetic wisdom to the post-Renaissance world. And he was touring Europe, helping wise and conscious people. He was also talking to Queen Elizabeth I, and Queen Elizabeth was almost going to turn England into a Hermetic republic. With the advice and action of the Giordano Bruno, but the plot was the plan to do so was discovered by the powers that be, and that didn't occur. But Giordano Bruno was pretty much hounded most of his life. He was on the run, really, most of the time, and finally they caught up with him, and for 7 years the Inquisition tried to find grounds to get rid of him, and eventually they did. And the grounds were that he was teaching things that were contrary to the church, such as the Bible is not a literal document, it's allegory. So he was teaching astrotheology. Secondly, he was teaching that the stars and planets and systems out there, the whole universe. Now that's something you don't go teaching when Christendom wants you to believe that God only made intelligent life on this planet as an experiment with Adam and Eve, and there is nothing else out there, don't even bother. If anything, there's angels and demons. So this is the fiction that the churches teach, and of course Giordano Bruno wouldn't have been very popular for teaching that. You got to remember, he was teaching stuff 30 years before Galileo Galilei was called in by the Inquisition, and he was one of the first ones to call stars suns and suns stars. You see, so we get a lot of astrotheology and a lot of stuff from Giordano Bruno. The other thing, of course, was he taught that the world needs to go back to Hermetic wisdom and Hermetic science, if ever we are going to save the world from depraved actions. So let's go to a break and to discussing some of Giordano Bruno's life. And welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network. You're with Santos Bonacci. And honouring the memory of Giordano Bruno today, and just to touch on some of his teachings and some of the things that he died for. It's quite surprising to see how insightful the man was. He knew exactly the crimes of the church of the day. And in a beautiful book by Francis Yates, I think it was written in the and around about in the 50s. First published in 1964. There you go. By Francis Yates. I do recommend you grab this book. It's a marvelous book. To understand Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic tradition. She also includes information in this book about two of his predecessors, Pico, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, the Kabbalist, and, of course, the great Ficino. Ficino. And so these three basically are the ones of the Italian Renaissance and the Hermetic tradition. These are the ones that carried the Prisca Theologia through and revived it. And Giordano Bruno was into astrotheology and sacred geometry. He has figures that he penned with his own hand. He has images of the flower of life, the fruit of life. He has images of the sine wave of creation, how electromagnetism works. I mean, his stuff needs to be revisited. He has so much for us today. But I'd like to read from the book, just a portion. So go succinctly at the heart of what he was all about and see how it ties in with the work of many astrotheologists like myself today who are teaching the same universal syncretic science that once pervaded the whole planet, and everyone lived in harmony by following the laws, not commandments, the laws of nature, of God, and where people knew the one God was the one mind. And the Hermetics called that one Pymander, the mind. Universe is mind. All is mind. And all that is visible is the product of that mind. And it is the motion projected from that mind, because all is motion. And the illusion of substance is just that, an illusion. And so, once upon a time we had that, and Giordano Bruno knew that. And this is what he disclosed to the world about the system that had persecuted the true Egyptian science. And he said about the Egyptian religion, he said, "It is the good religion which was overwhelmed in darkness when the Christians destroyed it, forbade it by statutes, substituted worship of dead things, foolish rites, bad moral behavior, and constant wars. For the Egyptian natural religion, with its Neoplatonic base, and the Egyptian good moral laws, Mercurio Egizio Sapientissimo is for Bruno the name of the divine wisdom itself, and the Spaccio della Bestia Trionfante outlines a coming religious and moral reform." So Bruno knew that the good religion was substituted for worship of dead things. In fact, Celsus, which I will get around to toward the second hour of this show, I'm going to move on to some of the first century philosophers who agree with Bruno about the Christian religion and what it has done to the world. And Celsus there called the Christian church a death cult, a funerary cult, obsessed with dead things. Thomas Paine also said the same thing. It's a dead thing. It's all about third-party vicarious, more powerful than oneself, which is also an illusion. Because as children of the divinity as divine units, we can never be less powerful than divinity. But the churches, of course, have substituted that religion with all these things. And interesting that he mentioned constant wars. This is what's going on today. How many wars have been fought for Christendom to advance its agenda on this globe? The Americas were conquered for Christendom. The Vatican sent Columbus in 1492. In 93, he signed the Treaty of Tordesillas in Portugal, and that pretty much sealed it. That was a real estate transaction, and the Vatican and hence Christendom possessed the lands of the indigenous Americans. Same thing happened here in Australia, and many of the islands of the sea and many other countries have been annexed by the Roman fascist corporation in this manner. And Giordano Bruno pointed out that they were constantly at war, inquisitions, crusades, witch hunts, killing Hermetists and scientists like, well, Galileo got away with it, didn't he? But even today, it's taken out if they've got something that's good and free. But certainly he made a good point there. On page 233 of the book, there are some more interesting comments which I'm going to read after the break as we go to a break. And honour the memory of a great man who died for truth, a scientist, Giordano Bruno. Yeah, and power is with the people. It already is with the people, for the people are divine. Now, just before the break, I was discussing Giordano Bruno's viewpoint to the Egyptian religion / science that once permeated the whole globe. And as he said, it was overwhelmed in darkness when the Christians destroyed it. In fact, that's what the Lament of Hermes talks about. Hermes in the Hermetica foresaw the time when Egypt would be overrun by barbarians and the gods of Egypt. In other words, the principles of the science that they had discovered. The properties and energies of the energy of electromagnetism. You see, the Egyptians were scientists and they knew about the science of how things manifested. And since we have manifested in the flesh and have a apparent solid body, there must be spiritual causes for that event, for that entity. And you see, this is what the scientists discovered, that there was. And there was a way to return back to that source and stay there immortally, forever, being the true nature of humankind, you see. And the Egyptians knew this science. 3.3, it says there, the basic theme of Bruno's Spaccio della Bestia Trionfante, that's his book from 1584, the one that got him condemned, is the glorification of the magical religion of the Egyptians. Their worship was really the worship of, quote, God in things, unquote. Yeah, God in things. For diverse living things represent diverse spirits and powers, which beyond the absolute being which they have, obtain a being communicated to all things according to their capacity and measure. Whence God, as a whole, though not totally, but in some more, in some less excellently, is in all things. So there he explains that God is in all things, some excellently, but he is in all things. And this is how he explains this. For Mars is more efficaciously in natural vestiges and modes of substance, in a viper or a scorpion, nay, even an onion or garlic, than in any inanimate picture or statue. Thus one should think of Sol, that's the sun, as being in a crocus, a daffodil, a sunflower, in the cock, in the lion, and thus one should conceive of each of the gods through each of the species grouped under the diverse genuses of the ends. As for the divinity, for as the divinity descends in a certain manner, inasmuch as it communicates itself to nature, an ascent made to the divinity through nature. Now, just a pause there. Yeah, that's the ascent, the ascension that we're noticing a lot more being discussed in recent times, the ascension of the human race, or at least a portion of the human race. This is what Giordano is discussing there, as the divinity descends. And that's what the Bible calls the Word being made flesh. The Word is sound and light. Because Christ is the Word and Christ is light. Light is the Creator. Light causes all things to manifest. And as the divinity descends through the levels of light, so the divinity must also ascend. Continuing on, thus through the light which shines in natural things, one which presides over them. And in truth I see how the wise men by these means had power to make familiar, affable, and domestic gods, which through the voices which came out of the statues gave counsels, doctrines, divinations, and superhuman teachings. Whence with magical and divine rites they ascended to the height of the divinity by that same scale of nature by which the divinity descends to the smallest things by the communication of itself. But what seems to me most deplorable is that I see some senseless and foolish idolaters who no more imitate the excellence of the cult of Egypt than the shadow approximates to the nobility of the body, and who seek the divinity, of which they know nothing, in the excrements of dead and inanimate things, and who not only mock at deep-seeing worshippers, but also at us, reckoning us to be no better than beasts. And what is worse, they triumph at seeing their foolish rites in such repute, while those of the others are vanished and annulled. Again, this is what the powers that be in Rome has done, as he says that they triumph in seeing their foolish rites in such repute, whilst those of the others are vanished and annulled. This is how the indigenous people of the Americas were treated. They were not allowed to practice their old, ancient teachings that were passed down to them from eons and eons of time. They were destroyed. Many of their religions were destroyed and defaced and decapitated. Many of their buildings and temples were destroyed. And of course, only 4 of the survived, the Popol Vuh. But this has been the modus operandi, and Giordano Bruno called them out. He called them out way back then, and they're being called out today. They are definitely being called out today. So there you have it. Giordano Bruno was talking about the true way, the true path, which is science. He was a scientist, and all philosophers study physics, logic, and ethics, which are sciences, and the seven liberal arts, which are sciences: astronomy or cosmology, mathematics, music, uh, geography or geometry, and of course logic, grammar, and rhetoric. And so that's what the scientist studies. Whereas the churchgoer is told to disregard those things. That's the foolishness of the world, and the world is perishing. So as we go to the break, that's my tribute to Giordano Bruno. And hopefully we can do some research on this wonderful man and bring to light his glorious teachings and the wisdom that he had and the depth of understanding. And he was a light to the world. Let's continue to remember Giordano Bruno. Welcome back. You're with Santos Bonacci on Oracle Broadcasting Network, and honouring the memory of Giordano Bruno, who died on the 17th of February, just yesterday for Northern Americans. Oh, actually, no, it's 2 days ago now. On the year 17th of February in the year 1600, Giordano Bruno was killed in Inquisition in the Piazza dei Fiori in Rome. And of course there would have been many people on the said date in Rome to remember the memory of Giordano Bruno. For every year he has attracted people to his statue that they have there in memory of Giordano Bruno. Now, Giordano Bruno acknowledged, as I just read from the book of Francis Yates, Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic Tradition, he acknowledged that the sun and Mars and all the planets are in all things. So, what did he mean by that? Well, as those Hermetic scientists understood, the sun is in all things. The sun is the creator. He is the creator, because the light is what sustains all the visible objects that you see and organisms visible to the human eye in the solar system. He makes them. He's the maker. He is the creator. Of course, he's in all things. He must be, because all the effects that we see are the product of light. Light is the grand creator. There in the heavens, that shining orb is Jehovah, God of armies. And as the sun is in all things, so are the six helpers: the moon, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury. They also refract light from the sun, and they also have sound which emanates from them, which also causes to create and to manifest. Without these seven orbs in place, the eighth sphere, the earth, would not be. This fashion that the Egyptian scientists understood that everything was sustained and created by the forces of light, electromagnetism. And so they paid honor to this science, you see, and the sun was the king, the Christ in the heavens. Look, you shall see me coming in the clouds. And he is the one that has healing in its wings, Malachi 4:2. Look, there is a day coming when the sun, with healing in its wings, will heal the nations. And of course, Ecclesiastes 11:7 says, it is good for the eyes to see the sun. The Egyptians were sun gazers, as are many indigenous civilizations and peoples, because by looking at the sun, one is able to harvest electric forces, which power the brain system. One is completely healthy with the rays of the sun. And this is something that the science consensus world will not tell you, because they tell you half-truths when they say that the sun's rays are harmful. Yes, they are. They are also harmful. And of course, that depends on the angle of the sun. So if the sun's in the mid-heaven at noon, you can rest assured that it's going to have some ultraviolet rays that will hurt your eyes. Whereas the sun on low on the horizon is very soft to the eyes and very loving and very healing. That's the sun with the healing in the wings. And so the Egyptians developed this science, and they always called that shining orb the king, and the moon was the queen. Jesus and Mary Magdalene, uh, uh, King Arthur and Guinevere, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebecca, etc., etc. And this king is always with his 12. In the Christian system, the king has 12 apostles, the 12 apostles. In Revelation, these are the 12 pillars of the temple of God. In the Old Testament, it was Jacob, or Israel, the son, and the 12 tribes of Israel. And as the Israelites encamped in the wilderness, they were instructed to have their encampments 3 tribes per quarter, and they were camping around a circle, as the zodiac was, 3 tribes per quarter. And this is how, in astrology, you have your quadrants, and you have 3 signs of the zodiac in each. And Giordano Bruno was one of these scientists who want to say the sun is a star, and the stars are suns. And he realizes that they were also the creators of the universe, the electric force which emanates from the undivided light, which is God. That's what God is. God is light, the still light. The undivided light that creates electromagnetism, that is the demiurge, the second creator. And this is what the scientists knew. Now, this is powerful information. If everybody gets to know this, everybody will know who they are. And Rome's services are no longer required. So that's the reason why the Hermetists and the teachers of this science have been persecuted for so many years. Now, Giordano Bruno said that Jupiter, Zeus, was the current ruler. And he knew his astrology, and he knew the cycle of precession, the 24,000 year backward movement of the sun through the signs of the zodiac. And he knew that the sun was in the sign of Pisces. And he knew that before that it was in the sign of Aries. And before that it was in the sign of Taurus. And he also knew that we were coming upon the long-awaited age of Aquarius, where all things would change, where the sun would return to the kingdom of Saturn. Saturn lost his kingdom many thousands of years ago. In the age of Aquarius, Saturn is the ruler, being the ruler of Aquarius, and Giordano Bruno used to greet his friends with a greeting for Saturn. In other words, they would greet each other, and they would say, "Cheers to Saturn and his long-awaited return," and they would never forget the Saturnian age, which would return after the tyrannical reign of Zeus. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, you see, Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces. He hands over to his daddy, Kronos, old man Kronos. So Zeus returns the kingdom back to Kronos, old man time, when the Aquarian age begins. But Zeus, he's been a naughty boy. Because, you see, Zeus is a tyrant, the god of gods, the one who likes to sleep with all the goddesses, Hera, Rhea, Venus, Diana. He sleeps around, you know. He's a bit of a tyrant in his kingdom. But in astrology, he's also called the Great. So he has his good side, Jupiter. He's very jovial. That's where Jove comes from. Jove is another name for Jupiter. But another name for Jupiter is Jupiter. Yeah, Saint Peter. You know the statue in Rome that the Catholics kiss, the toe of Saint Peter? That statue used to be called Jupiter because it's Jupiter. So the Church of Peter that has been collecting all those pennies, you know, Peter's pence, is the Church of Zeus. That would be Jesus. Yeah. The Christian age has been dominated by Jesus, or Zeus, Jesus. And that's the last 2,000 years of the Piscean age, you see. And Zeus, being the greater benefic, he says, you must love your enemies. This is why Jesus says, you must love your enemies. Unlike the god Mars prior to Pisces, the god of war, Jehovah, I am the god of armies. He was the one that said, you must hate your enemies. The New Testament God is benefic. He says you must love your enemies. But the Old Testament was not. And we'll get back to that after the break, shall we? Have the Lord by your side. And the Lord is the El Lord. And the El is the Elohim, and the Elohim are the seven. The seven that keep turning up in everything that we see. And as Manly P. Hall, the great occult teacher, said, everything is a septenary. Everything in nature is a septenary. And man cannot but notice sevens and octaves everywhere he goes, because he comes from the perspective of seven. Everything that we are is a sevenfold. We are a sevenfold entity. And the seven energies that compose and co-create this beautiful body of molecules, molecular organism of carbon crystals, they are the seven orbs in the sky. The ones that were always honoured in all systems. Rome honoured the soul. In fact, they had the great famous birthday for the sun on the 25th of December. And that was for Sol Invictus, because nothing could conquer the sun. All the other planets, they seem to, they seem to have the problem of retrograding. You know, that seemed to be sort of something that made them less powerful and less glorious than the sun. The sun was always direct. Like its companion, the moon, always direct, never retrograding. Whereas because of the funny spiral nature of our solar system, the other planets appear during the course of the year to go backwards, to retrograde. So, you know, this sort of gives the sun more stature in the fact that he is always constant and firm and firmly founded in his, you see. He sets the example. And when he's found in a house, for instance, right now he is in the last degrees of Aquarius, and in a couple of days we're going to have Pisces, you see. And by the way, this will be the last Pisces in the sign of Pisces. For next year, 2013, it will be Pisces in the sign of Aquarius. Now it's Pisces in the sign of Aquarius, the last one. And Zeus has to hand over the kingdom, and a new sun will be born. According to the Mayans, it will be the son of ether, the fifth sun of the fifth element. And as this sun is also a interloper, this sun is new in our solar system. Before this sun, we had Saturn was the sun. In fact, the bolt. Org or Thunderbolt Project, while Thornhill and Don Scott and David Talbot talk about this. They talk about how Saturn was in a different position around about 15,000 years ago, and it was the true sun of this system, and it was knocked out, and this sun appears. And this sun has been carrying us through a good portion of the last 15,000 years. And he's going to hand over to another sun. And that's how it works. According to the Mayans, there will be 72 hours of darkness, after which will be reborn the new sun. And the sun will be going into Aquarius. Aquarius's motto is "I know," whereas the motto of Pisces, the two fish, is "and I believe." And of course, that's the Church of Christ. Christianity is a doubting church and a believing church. They doubt and they believe, tossed on the waves like fish, tossed on the waters, you see. No knowing. That's why Aquarius comes with his spiritual waters and baptizes us in the baptism of the Spirit, which is the baptism of direct knowing. And so we proceed further up. As Giordano Bruno was saying, we have a chance to ascend in our vibration. We have a chance to return closer to the divinity that we are. And so, as you see, the sun changes its nature as it goes through the houses. For the last 2,000 years, the sun has been in Pisces, but the opposite sign of Pisces, the autumnal equinox, is Virgo. And Virgo, Bethlehem, where Jesus is born, Jesus in the sign of Pisces, the womb of the Virgin. And so the sun has been feeding his little children with bread and fish. And you'll remember that Jesus, when he was on the mount, the Sermon of the Mount, where he produced his Sermon on the Mount, he actually did feed the multitudes with bread and fish, 2 fish and 5 bread baskets, because there are 5 zodiacal signs between Virgo and Pisces. But the other interesting fact is that these signs are mutable, you see. For 2,000 years now, the cardinal points have been in mutable signs. The solstices have been in Gemini. So the mutable cross has hexed or cursed, you could say, the world in mutability. You see, in change. We've had change for 2,000 years, great change. As the vernal equinox was migrating through Pisces, and the autumnal through Virgo, and the summer solstice through Gemini, then the winter solstice through Sagittarius. After 2012, the cardinal points will be in the fixed signs: Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Of course, Aquarius is the indicator. In the West, the vernal equinox is the indicator, whereas in the East, it's the autumnal equinox, and so they give that to Leo. They say that Leo is the sign that is coming, the sign of intuition and emotion mixed together alchemically, and the golden age, and the dragon's breath. When Aquarius and Leo begins, the fixed cross, the fixed divine cross will be over, its energies will be over this earth. So there will be a change. There will be a new order. And the prophecy of the new order of the ages, which the New World Order types have co-opted, the prophecy of Virgil in the 4th eclogue, which says that there will be a new order of the ages. That's the new order. Not the New World Order. That is an antichrist system which will go off into perdition. Because this is what happens. Madness happens at the end of the Iron Age. Madness happens at the end of Pisces, in the cusp when the sun is handing over dominion from one sign to another. We are so blessed and so lucky to be living in the cusp. We're seeing one of the greatest transitions in the history of the universe. The sun now going through into the kingdom of Aquarius, where where many cycles are going to zero in, not just the equinoctial cycle of 24,000 years, but also the 225 million year revolution of the Milky Way galaxy on its axis. That's coming to 0 point, and also another cycle of 104,000 years, which are 4 cycles of precession. These are all zeroing in, and of course Pisces to Aquarius, the difference in the energy, in the principalities of the air from Jupiter to Saturn. And it's the top of the hour, and we'll go to a break. Catch you on the other side. Second hour of the show, in which I am honouring the memory of Giordano Bruno, the great Hermetic teacher. And thank you for joining and continuing with me for the second hour. Callers, if you'd like to call in, the number is 512-904-8014. And I do believe I have a caller. I'm going to go to, it might be just a listener, so you're quite welcome to tell me whether you're just a listener. Jason in California. Now, are you there, please, listener? No. Okay. Well, please call in if you've got any questions on the subject of Giordano science, and talk with us. The number is 512-904-8014. Now, the turning of the wheel of precession was well known to the ancients. They erected most of their megalithic monuments to alignments of precession. Stonehenge, the pyramids, the Mayan buildings, etc. They're all aligned. And they're all aligned to certain points, mostly cardinal points like the equinoxes, you see. So, for instance, for 3 days in the year, you will see light that appears through certain fissures and through certain purposely carved masonry. And the light of the sun will pour through these little holes and apertures during certain times of the year. And it's fascinating to see for people who go around to Chichen Itza and places like that around the world for the solstices and the equinoxes. They are really dealt a treat when they see the phenomena of the sun as it goes through the cardinal points. But the cardinal points are forever migrating, you see. They're always traveling around, and they're always at different points. But in the Hermetic science, they are also fixed. They are also always fixed at, for instance, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Whereas when you follow the solar system, you'll notice that the cardinal points are moving, you see, the true cardinal points. So this is what is happening with this great alignment. Now, the alignment is very unique because on the 21st of December 2012, that will be the solstice, the winter solstice. And on those magic days of the solstices and the equinoxes, the sun is passing through the cross and being crucified. This cross is called the mundane cross. The divine cross is the cross in the skies, and that cross is the one that aligns at the end of the cycle, at the beginning of Taurus, Aquarius, Leo, and Scorpio. And that's exactly where the cardinal points are poised right now. As we speak, there they are, and they're just waiting for this alignment that Nostradamus called the alignment of the eight-spoke wheel. The eight-spoked wheel is the mundane cross with the divine cross, as above, so below. And we'll take a short break. And welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network, and you're with Santos Bonacci. Hope you're enjoying the show, honouring the great Giordano Bruno, who died on the 17th of February, 412 years ago in the year 1600 at the Inquisition, who had the authority from God to kill anyone who said stuff that they didn't like. Sounds pretty much like Homeland Security, doesn't it? Yeah, Homeland Security, the protecting of the fatherland, and the Patriot Act and all these things. Kinda, sorta, doesn't it? Yeah, for callers, if you'd like to call in, 512-904-8014. Now, I'm going to go back to Jason. I hope you're calling in because you're in the vault, and I don't want to ignore you. So if you're just listening, you can just let me know if that's okay. Are you there, caller? Yes, are you there? Hello? Okay, I would say that's just listening, and if so, my apologies. I just don't want to be rude, and it gives in the vault calling in. Now, Giordano Bruno was certainly in agreement with many that went before him about this solar science that permeated the earth, and all of the ancient schools and theologies knew about it and respected this science. You see, in India, it turns out that this science was Buddhism and Hinduism. In the West, it was Mithraism, and the followers of Serapis, as Philo calls them. He says that if you're looking for the Christians, you need to go down to Alexandria, and the followers of Serapis were the first ones in history that called themselves Christian, or at least that he knew of, because as I've proved and shown in my videos, Christianity it's always been around. It's the universal religion. This science of light, it's the science of light. That's what it is. It's not a religion. As Giordano Bruno explained, it was the churches that did this. The churches turned it into a religion because they couldn't understand the science. It's pretty much what would happen is if you gave a blueprint to a nuclear power station to a pygmy down in Africa, and you said, "Hey, can you read this for me?" That's pretty much how it was when Rome was founded in the age of the Iron Age, where mankind was already very, very dull, very, very dull of spirit and of memory. And so the Roman elite took advantage of this and created a religious system, religion meaning to bind, to tie together in a bundle like fasci. You see, and they always tell you where they rule because you'll see the symbols of the fasci. For instance, the two that stand aside the military and maritime flag in Congress, when Congress are united, you see the Speaker will always stand in front of that gold-trimmed flag of the United States Corporation. And right to the sides are the fasci of Rome. Rome tells you where she rules. Doesn't keep it a secret. The Holy See is the Holy See because it's maritime, and Rome rules as she's always done. But Giordano Bruno was in good company. We have people like Saint Patrick, who said the true Christ is the Son. We have people like Albertus Magnus, who said, we know that the sign of the celestial Virgin did come to the horizon at the moment where we have fixed the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. All the mysteries of the incarnation of our Saviour Christ, and all the circumstances of his marvellous life from his conception to his ascension, are not to be traced out, are to be traced out in the constellations, and are figured in the stars. There you have it, Albertus Magnus, one of the doctors. We have Leonardo da Vinci, who said, I could wish that I had such power of language as should avail me would extol the worship of men above that of the sun. Those who have wished to worship men have made a very grave error. What he's talking about there is how we have fallen from the solar science to a practice which is what Leonardo da Vinci said is a grave error, the worship of men. He was referring to the historical Christ, knowing full well that it didn't happen. It's a fiction, an invention of Rome for the purpose of enslaving the masses. His contemporary pope, that is Leonardo da Vinci's, Leo X, made this admission, which is well known because it was recorded by one of his cardinals who heard it, when he said, it is well known how profitable this fable of Christ has been. And his predecessor, Pope Alexander VI, said, Almighty God, how long will this superstitious sect of Christians and the upstart invention endure? Thomas Paine said, the Christian religion is a parody on the worship of the sun, in which they put a man whom they call Christ in the place of the sun, and pay him the same adoration which was originally paid to the sun. Ammonius Saccas, one of the, well, they say that he was the founder of the Neoplatonic school, the new Platonists that arrived in Rome on the scene in the 2nd century, the teacher of Plotinus, who also taught Porphyry and went on to teach, and Porphyry taught, of course, Iamblichus, and there was Proclus in that mix. All of these great Neoplatonic scholars, great of the solar science. And he said, he taught that Christianity and paganism, which when rightly understood, differ in no essential points, but had a common origin, and are really one and the same religion. Clement, in Excerpts Ex Theodoto 25, paragraph 2, says, the Valentinian Gnostic Theodotus, he says the apostles were substituted for the 12 signs of the zodiac. And with that in mind, let's go to a break, shall we? Welcome back. You're with Santos Bonacci and discussing some of the company that the great Giordano Bruno was in. He was in good company. You've got all these shining lights. You've got people like, I've mentioned St. Patrick, Ammonius Saccas. Emperor Julian said in his invectives against the Galileans in the year 362, when within 40 years of the Council of Nicaea, he said, it is, I think, expedient to set forth to all mankind the reasons by which a fabrication of the Galileans is a fiction of men composed by wickedness. That's the historical Christian church. The Manichaeans. Christ is the glorious intelligence which the Persians called Mithras. His residence is the sun. In the Nag Hammadi teachings of Sylvanus taught that the Christ is the true light and the sun of life. Marsilio Ficino, the great predecessor to Giordano Bruno, the one who translated the Corpus Hermeticum, said in the Book of the Sun in 1494, chapter 2, how the light of the sun is similar to goodness itself, namely God. Above all, the sun is most able to signify to you God himself, the sun, and who would dare to call the sun false? Finally, the invisible things of God, that is to say, the angelic spirits, can be most powerfully seen by the intellect through the stars, and indeed even eternal things. The virtue and divinity of God can be seen through the sun. Dupuy, Napoleon's man, along with Volney, these two were the first of the French to really teach the science of astrotheology. And Dupuy had an entire chapter entitled An Explanation of the Fable in which the Sun is Worshipped under the Name of Christ. And I'll tell you, I learnt a lot from that chapter. A lot of Dupuy's book is in my presentations that I have presented in YouTube videos. And Dupuy says, when we shall have shown that the pretended history of a god born of a virgin at the winter solstice, who resuscitates at Easter or at the equinox of spring, after having descended into hell, of a god who has 12 apostles in his train, whose leader has all the attributes of Janus, of a god conqueror, of the prince of darkness, who restores to mankind the dominion of light, and who redeems the evils of nature, is merely a solar fable, like all those which we have analyzed. It will be quite as indifferent, or of as little consequence, whether there ever existed a man by the name of Christ, as it would be to inquire whether some prince was called Hercules, provided it will be conclusively demonstrated that the being consecrated by worship under the name of Christ is the sun, and that the marvelousness of the legend or of the same poem has that luminary for its object, because it would seem then to be proved that the Christians are, in fact, I think he goes on to say, I've lost the end of that quote for some reason. I'll need to check where that went, but he was getting somewhere with that, wasn't he? Okay, that's an unfinished quote, but there you go. He explains there quite clearly that the Christian story is merely a solar fable. Friedrich Nietzsche, the Christian church, is an encyclopedia of prehistoric cults. Volney, Count Volney, Dupuy's friend, and in fact, Volney used to go over to visit Thomas Jefferson, you know, those boys. And they copped a dose of astrotheology. Of course, they founded the Hermetic Republic of the United States of America. And they were followers of these two guys, Dupuy and Volney, and they understood the solar symbolism in the scriptures. Of course, Jefferson had his own Bible version, the Jefferson version, in which all the miracles of Christ were deleted. knowing full well that these were fables, you see. Things you teach to children like Santa Claus. Philosophically true, but not historically true, of course. It is the sun which, under the name of Horus, was born like your Christian god at the winter solstice, in the arms of the celestial Virgin, who was past a childhood of obscurity, indigence and want, answering to the season of cold and frost. So there you have it. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I've got William Tyler Olcott in his book Sun Law of All Ages. The very basis of mythology lies in the idolatrous worship of the solar Great Father and the lunar Great Mother, who were the first objects of worship that the history of the race records. And look, I don't want to go on. I can go on ad nauseum. I'll leave it at that. Because there's quite a bit more to examine about this astrotheology, about some aspects of astrotheology, you see, as we find in the mythologies. We find that always the hero is the conqueror, Perseus, who slays Medusa, the starlit night, Little Red Riding Hood, who gets swallowed up by the wolf of darkness, Lupus, who sits as a deacon in the sign of Libra, the scales. The scales always sit at 6 p.m. where the sun sets. There is the wolf, and Little Red Riding Hood, the red sun as it sets, is devoured by the wolf in Libra, and the sun goes below the horizon and then pops up the other side. And of course, there is the huntsman, Orion, in the morning. And Orion slays the wolf, and out pops Little Red Riding Hood, and off she goes again. And Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Humpty Dumpty, and all of these characters find Jack and the Beanstalk, all find their home in the solar fable, because these traditions were taught to us for the purpose of educating us to the principle of the sun that is the great benefactor. For the sun is the primary source of energy and vitality and life that we have in the solar system. It is the saviour. It is in fact the saviour. So poetically we call him the saviour of mankind, you see. And the moon, the mother, she is the church, the spiritual mother. The earth is the physical mother. We have two mothers, Hagar and Sarah. Sarah is the mother of the spiritual sons of Israel, and Hagar the physical, the flesh. And let's take a break. We'll see you on the other side. Yeah, and welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network. You're with Santos Bonacci. And this show has been in honor of Giordano Bruno and the great Hermetic legacy that Giordano Bruno left, and the great insights that he left the world. We do certainly stand to benefit from knowing his teachings and what he stood for, and what he was all about. He was an ascended, great, insightful teacher, and certainly one who loved mankind and wanted the good for mankind. And so on the 17th of February, year 1600, Giordano Bruno was put to death, and they actually I think they tied his tongue or nailed it to something so that he would not be able to speak at the slow burning of his naked body. And of course, when they passed the judgment to him, the famous words were, "I fear that you who have," he was talking to the man who sentenced him, I fear that this is more burdensome for you who have passed this sentence than for me to carry. Because he knew that the man that was putting him to death or handing him over to be killed knew that Giordano Bruno was innocent of crimes for which he should pay with his life. But you see, when it comes to business and commerce, which is what Christendom is all about, they don't care about truth. Now, because truth just does not advance their causes. Now, as for the Christian system, I mean, we've got people like Celsus that was exposing. I mean, oh, I can read. Wow. All right. Well, let's have a bit of a read then, shall we? Celsus, what does he say? On page 70 of the book, which was translated by the Reverend Joseph Hoffman, he also translated Julian and Porphyry against the Christians. On page 70 he says, now the Christians are just as proud as the Jews. They profess to seek converts but thrive on martyrdom. I rather suspect that if all men desired to become Christians, the cult would immediately shut the door to converts. At the start of their movement, they were very few in number and unified in purpose. Since that time, they have spread all around and now number in the thousands. It is not surprising, therefore, that there are divisions among them, factions of all sorts, each wanting to have its own territory. Nor is it surprising that as these divisions have become so numerous, the various parties have taken to condemning each other. Yeah. Sounds like he's writing in modern times, doesn't it? And yet he was writing 1850 years ago. Condemning each other. Yeah, like the Mormons condemning the Jehovah's Witnesses, condemning the Catholics, condemning the Protestants, condemning the Orthodox, condemning everybody else. It's just childish nonsense. And he goes on to say, so that today they only have one thing, if that, in common, the name Christian. But despite their clinging proudly to their name, in most other respects they are at odds. I suppose, however, that it is more amazing that there are any points of agreement at all, given the fact that their belief rests on no solid foundation. They are agreed, for instance, that outsiders are not to be trusted, and that they themselves must refrain perpetual apostates from the approved religions. Let's see, what else can I pluck from this book? Because he attacked because, well, he had reason to. It was obvious, it was patent. It was well known, very well known. He said on page 91, thus is the extent of their evil and their ignorance. Christians, it is needless to say, utterly detest each other. They slander each other constantly with the vilest forms of abuse and cannot come to any sort of agreement in their teaching. Each sect brands its own, fills the head of its own with deceitful nonsense. With deceitful nonsense, perfect little pigs, of those it wins over to its size. Make a few adjustments to my office here. So you see, Celsus was well aware of what was going on with all the factions. He called them factions. In fact, he called their little organizations clubs. He said that they cling to their clubs, you know, like little children. Now, he was a Hermetist, of course, Celsus, and so was another gentleman by the name of Thomas Paine. Yeah, he'd be the guy that was around when the revolution was going on. And he had a lot to say about Christianity going on. And this is what he said in his book, The Age of Reason, chapter 11. The theology of the Christians and the true theology. As to the Christian system of faith, it appears to me as a species of atheism, a sort of religious denial of God. It professes to believe in a man rather than in God. It is a compound made up chiefly of manism, but with little deism. And it is as near to atheism as twilight is to darkness. It introduces between man and his maker an opaque body, which it calls a redeemer. As the moon introduces her opaque self between the earth and the sun, and it produces by this means a religious or an irreligious eclipse of light. It has put the whole orbit of reason into shade. The effect of this obscurity has been that of turning everything upside down and representing it and among the revolutions it has thus magically produced, it has made a revolution in theology. That which is now called natural philosophy, embracing the whole circle of science. Science, natural philosophy. Of which astronomy occupies the chief place, is the study of the works of God, and of the power and wisdom of God in his works, and is the true theology. As to the theology that is now studied in its place, it is the study of human opinions and of human fancies concerning God. It is not the study of God himself in the works he has made, but in the works or writings that man has made. And it is not among the least of the mischiefs that the Christian system has done to the world, that it has abandoned the original and beautiful system of theology, like a beautiful innocent to distress and reproach, to make for the hag of superstition. Yeah, the hag of superstition. That's the old witch, you know, that hag that lives down in the cave. That's what he was saying. That's Thomas Paine, and it was his book that caused the American Revolution. 500 copies of the Common Sense that was published. That was enough to get America the win. The 3% of the population that won against King George, all backed on the prodding and encouragement of Thomas Paine, the revolutionary. See, all of these guys were Hermetists, undoubtedly. George Washington was a Freemason, Jefferson, all of these guys, Franklin, and they founded the Republic. But I guess along came the 21st of February, 1981 Act. Or was it, 1881? Yeah, the US Corporation. Catch you after the break. Okay, and welcome back to Oracle Broadcasting Network with Santos Bonacci for the final show in the honour of Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic tradition of science as opposed to religion. And of course, I was discussing some of the founders of the American Republic, like John Adams, Jefferson. These types, they were Hermetists, and people get shocked when you talk like that don't know the history, that haven't done any research or any study, and just listen and repeat erroneous opinions that were given to them from their teachers at high school, you know, in history classes. John Adams signed the Treaty of Tripoli. In Article 11, it states, "The government of the United States is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion." Thomas Jefferson said, "In every country and every age, the priest has been hostile to liberty." Christianity has become the most perverted system that ever shone on man. Rogueries, absurdities, and untruths were perpetuated upon were perpetrated upon the teachings of Jesus by a large band of dupes and impostors led by Paul, the first great corrupter of the teachings of Jesus. I have examined all the known superstitions of the world, and I do not find in our particular superstition of Christianity one redeeming feature. They are all alike founded on fables and mythology. Millions of innocent men, women, and children since the introduction of Christianity have been burnt, tortured, fined, and imprisoned. What has been the effect of this coercion? To make one half of the world fools and the other half hypocrites, to support error all over the earth. This is Thomas Jefferson I'm quoting here, people. Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. How about a little bit of James Madison? What influence, in fact, have Christian ecclesiastical establishments had on civil society? In many instances, they have been upholding the thrones of political tyranny. In no instance have they been seen as the guardians of the liberties of the people. Rulers, take note here, people, this is James Madison. Rulers who wish to subvert the public liberty have found in the clergy convenient auxiliaries. A just government instituted to secure and perpetrate liberty does not need the clergy. There you go, for all these Christians jumping up and down saying, oh, we need to bring America back to its founding principles. Well, we do. But it's not. No. Christianity's just been a killing for about 2,000 years. That's all they've been doing. Killing indigenous people and hermetists and witches and everything else that they want to dub as evil. That's all they do. Chapman Cohen, Essays in Free Thinking, said, when the complete record of Christianity's misdeeds is finally and accurately written, this will stand out as its greatest crime against civilization. Its greatest crime has been not the burning of men at the stake or the imprisonment of others in the Christian dungeons, but in the lower type of mind and character that it has encouraged, in the hypocrisy that it has made almost a sacred character, a second character. In pagan Rome, it was said that one priest could not meet another without a smile. If Christian can meet a grave face, it is only because the selective influence of Christianity has developed a type that lacks the wit to perceive the absurdity of its own religious beliefs. Well, let me go on. I've got a whole bunch of great quotes that really just condemn the corporate churches. It's time for unconscious corporations to fall over, and the next few months will bring that. Mark my words, the next few months will bring big falls. The world of commerce is at its end. Commerce has destroyed mankind. Commerce has been a nasty beast, Babylon the Great. And in fact, anyone who has a birth certificate is a citizen of Rome and a slave of Rome. Anyone who has a birth certificate has a death certificate and is a shareholder with the corporation, because if you live in America, for instance, you are a citizen of the US. That is a corporation. 1871. In fact, I have to correct what I said, what I quoted before the break. It was 1871, I'm quite sure now, just after Lincoln. So the 1871 Act, the US corporation, a commercial entity. That's all it is. And it poses as a government because it's the biggest corporation in America, on American soil, you see. Now, these corporations are about to fall over because that is the the duration of their reign, their unconscious corporation, but an unconscious entity, an unconscious, just paper. It's just, it's not a living thing. So people, we are going to go back to be governing our own selves through consciousness. The system of unconsciousness just doesn't work. And therefore it produces unconscious young boys who don a suit and put a gun on their hip belt and go off to war to kill other people who look a little bit different. You know, have got different ideas and what have you, and who live in a different country, in a different jurisdiction. But just go over there and kill them. You know, they're Libyans, you know. And try out the new artillery from the military-industrial complex, produced by the greatest military-industrial complex the world has ever known, the Vatican Corporation of the US. And you see, of course, they've got to get rid of their produce and their they can't just sit them on shelves, otherwise the whole corporation goes broke. And guess who's supporting that corporation? Every single US citizen. Because, well, they are shareholders. You're the sole shareholder of your corporation, your corporate entity. But really, in reality, you're not. They give you the illusion that you are, but you still give them billions of dollars because they float the securitized bond on the market, and it generates billions of dollars. So people, this is the system that is about to go down. Doesn't work. It's unconscious. The Christ has returned. The consciousness that will govern us is here. It's with us. The kingdom of priests of 144,000 have returned. And hallelujah, pieces are coming. And the Saturnian religions of, you know, your Skull and Boners and the Bilderbergers and the Club of Rome, these types, lies in the not too distant future. So rejoice, chin up, people. Don't ever be negative. Fear is the only thing you need to fear. And realize your power. Know who you are, for you are divine. You never were anything less than the divinity. Yeah, sure, the body is mortal, but the spirit is immortal. And as Ovid, the great poet, said in the Metamorphoses, man, let me tell you what happens when you die. Do not fear, for you are immortal. And you will go on, and you will live and live and live. And of course, this is our true nature, people. Never forget who you are, like the prodigal son who remembers and returns. Don't fall asleep in death, for the dead will bury their dead. And those that are continuing to buy and sell and eat and drink till the flood comes and sweeps them all away because of their unconsciousness, try not to do but try and be in the number that goes marching in. Yeah, like the song says, oh Lord, how I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. So be sun knowers, people, heliognostics. Know the sun, know the solar science, and you will be in that number. Catch you next week.